Welcome to Loving Me Before I Love You with Tammy Nicole, the podcast dedicated to you loving and putting yourself first. Others have come first in your life for years, and you know it's time for that to change. You're about to be empowered to set healthy boundaries, confidently have hard conversations, unapologetically put yourself first, and live the peaceful life you deserve. Remember, self-love is essential, and loving yourself sets the stage for every other love in your life. So get ready to embrace self-love like never before with your host, Coach Tammy Nicole.
Hey friends, welcome back. It is Transformation Tuesday with Tammy Nicole over here at Loving Me Before I Love You. And it's the month of June still, guys. And this week we are coming upon Father's Day. And so we want to honor our dads, the men that are standing strong, who are stepping up to the plate, doing the things that they're supposed to do as dad. We want to honor them. I know we do a lot of, dad bashing most of the time on multiple different platforms, but we want to honor dads. And I have a guest with me today. Her name is Miss Kayla Blackwood, and she is with us, and she wants to give her dad some flowers and show how much she loves him and show what makes him a great father for herself. She is a behavioral therapist, as well as she has her own platform, her own brand, doing self-care education for I don't know if it's just for women, it may be for everybody, but she's teaching self-care out there. And so we want to give her a heartfelt welcome to the Tammy Nicole Loving Me Before I Love You podcast. Welcome, Kayla.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to join you today.
I'm so glad you could be with us. So, I hear you're daddy's girl.
Yes.
And of course, we all want to know what makes your dad so special that you just want to give him all the honor, the praises as being a daddy's girl. Like, I know it's really hard out here for men most of the time when it comes to being honored. They feel like nobody gives them the time of day, right? It's like, oh, it's Father's Day. Yeah. Here's some socks. Have a good day. We don't want to do that, right? We want to give them some real shine, some real honor. So tell us a little bit about you and your dad's relationship.
So me and my dad, we've always been close. I grew up in a two-parent household, so I always had both my parents, and I always had that connection with both my parents. But what really built that relationship with my dad is my mom did experience illness on and off my entire life. And, I felt like there were times where I didn't have support from other family members in terms of taking care of my mom or helping with my mom. And so I did spend a lot of time with my dad because if my mom was in the hospital, I have to be with my dad. There's no one else really there. Mm-hmm. And it got to a point where I would go to work with my dad every single day. And my dad worked long hours. So I'd go to work with my dad every day. And I just felt like my dad's friend from a young age. The things that we would get into, like, you really would think, like, why is she doing that with her dad? Or why is he doing that with her? But we just had fun when I was a kid. And when I got older, it just never stopped. Like, the support was always there. My dad is he's a pretty strict guy and a pretty militant guy, because I'm Jamaican and my dad's older. So he's very, very old school, very country, and there's there's stigmas about older, more traditional old school men, but my dad always had that emotional factor with me. Like, he might maybe not show his emotions with other people, but I can say I saw my dad's emotions, and that can be so reassuring as a girl growing up. Like, a lot of people say, I never saw my dad cry. I never heard my dad say, I love you. But I had the opposite experience where I feel like I never stopped hearing I love you, like probably hundreds of times a day. And if anything happened to me, my dad felt as if it happened to him. Like my dad was so empathetic towards me, and like if anything happened to me, it's like he felt like he was gonna die. Like so, I felt like that love and care was really always there. So I can definitely say that's the big thing about my relationship with my dad.
Awesome. Awesome. You're right. We don't really hear that often. Typically most men have been taught at such a young age to not connect with their emotions, yet alone share them or express them. So typically, yeah, we don't hear that. We don't hear that dads are emotionally connected or sharing their emotions with their children. It's like an understood thing. I love you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them may say it here and there, but I think that of course it depends on their own upbringing and how they were raised, if I love yous were being shared within their household or not,
Mm-hmm.
or if they didn't get it in their household but desired it, and when they had their own kids decided, you know what, I'm going to implement this tradition in my household, that I'm going to share how I feel and say I love you to my children and my wife or my significant other in general. So that is definitely a unique experience because most of us, don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
We desire it. How was having your dad in your life? Let me say it this way. Were all of your friends from two-parent households? Did you have friends that were from single-parent household? And did that relationship from your dad kind of affect your relationships with your friends?
It's funny that you asked that because that's something I've thought about for years. It did negatively affect relationships with people that grew up with a single mother. I did experience a lot of jealousy when I was younger, and even from family members that had single mothers in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Point where we don't speak at all. And I keep trying to say that it's not me doing anything to you. Like, I'm sorry that that's your experience, but this is my experience, and I I was born into it. Like, I didn't decide that you would have a single mother and I wouldn't. So I really do try and show that empathy towards those individuals, but I just feel like there has always been a lot of projection towards me based on my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've had, since this is, a topic in relation to Father's Day, I've had someone say to me that I'm selfish for saying I love you on Father's Day to my dad. And it's very strange, and I can understand where that feeling comes from, but at the same time, to project your pain onto someone else who's actually not trying to cause harm to you, I was just living my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people in my life did take that as a personal attack. And I've had people diminish my accomplishments just because I have a dad. So I've had people say I only graduated high school because I have a dad. I only graduated university because
Wow.
I have a two-parent household. I've heard these things throughout my life, so it did negatively affect certain relationships for sure. With people that have single parents, or I've even had just people with single parents just ghost me. Like, I thought we were friends. I find out that there's this jealousy that they can't seem to get over. And I understand if you need to eliminate the thing that's triggering you, I understand, but it does hurt when it's not me
Yeah.
doing anything. So that's definitely something I've experienced, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot over the years because, like, on the other end of it, I lost a relationship with someone because of something I never really did. So I did experience that a lot growing up.
Wow. We don't talk about it. It doesn't really come up often that, people will not want to be in connection with someone but that has something that they don't have or didn't have the experience of having. Did you ever find that your dad was able to extend his love to some of your friends that grew up in single parent households? I know, like, for myself, I grew up in a single parent household. Though I knew my dad and though I had a relationship with him, he did not live in the same state with me.
Mm-hmm.
However, I had a best friend in high school, and her dad would was my dad. You know what I mean? Like he extended himself to provide love and share guidance and, you know, be a father figure in my life. And I just wondered, like, did your dad have that opportunity, or did people kind of shut him off and say, oh, no, 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 I don't need you. You know, you can kind of stay over there. Or were they, you know, did he open his arms as well as theirs?
I would say my dad didn't try extremely hard, but at the same time, my dad worked a lot to try and provide for my family. So that option wasn't necessarily even there. My dad would leave for work at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning and not get home till 9. So that opportunity wasn't really there. But at the same time, when we would have conversations, like his mindset was there though. But at the same time, I've also experienced where he would be willing to help, but then again with the projection, people would be like, well, that's not my dad, so why would I take the help? Like, so it was very back and forth, on and off with what I experienced, because I also have a sister. We have different dads though. She's older than me. And like they were very close before I was born, and then unfortunately we no longer speak. And a lot of it has to do with her animosity towards me because she grew up with our mom as a single mom and I didn't. So then her relationship with my dad became strained. So it did even happen with my own sibling. So I did experience that too. He was always there, but then things changed once, you know, a little bit of animosity was built.
Wow. That's unfortunate. But I see it happen all the time because it's a change. You know, it was a change. The fact that you came along, but on top of it, she understood the difference, you know, the biological difference, shall I say. Prior to your arrival, there was no, you know, she was it. So I can definitely see how that transpires. And it's very unfortunate, but you still had your daddy.
Yeah, it's like it's hard to talk about a little bit because I'm still working through it actually emotionally. It hurt me a lot because I wasn't the one to necessarily do anything, but you know, because this is related to the topic, I did want to share that. But yeah, it definitely does hurt, you know, and I've seen it with other families too. Just unfortunate I had to experience it as well.
Yeah, I get it. And unfortunately, like I said, it's unfortunate. You know, those are like deep wounds, you know, especially when they're bloodline wounds. I think those are the hardest wounds to heal from in general, just because we have the notion or narrative that those that we are born into should always be there in a certain capacity, you know? And so when they're not there or when they do hurtful things, that wound runs deep. And to heal from it and dig it out and try to understand that people are only able to operate into the capacity that they have experience and the capacity that they have knowledge is very difficult at times. And so I feel for you in that space, you know, do the work. You know, I am a strong believer that you can heal from any and everything. I just think a lot of times it just takes additional time. In general, right? Like it just takes that extra little, and I know I hear you say like, but I didn't cause this, I didn't make this change, I didn't ask for this to be, this is just kind of like what is my natural habitat in a way, you know, it's like it's what was provided to me that I'm just simply living in and existing in and learning and, you know, moving forward. And individuals that can't really accept it, it's kind of like, I don't really know what to tell you, but you don't have to hurt me just because that's my truth, right? So how do you, when like your relationship with your dad now, like you're an adult now, and as a kid it was like super, super amazing. Is it still super, super amazing? Does it affect your romantic relationships at all?
Not really, because thankfully I can say he's not one of the type of dads that would like be jealous of a partner or something like. But I will say, when I started living with my partner, my dad, I think he cried for like 6 months every day. And it's like really funny because he kept saying like, "Oh, I can't believe it happened so soon," and I'm like, "I'm almost 30." I so like I was trying. It was really difficult with that transition with him because in his head, I'm literally still 8 years old. So to him, it's like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, how is this happening?" And I'm like, if anything, compared to my counterparts, I'm doing it kind of late. A lot of my friends already have kids, already married, living with their husband for how many years? And for him to say, like, "Oh, it's so soon." And he always refers to me as his sidekick. So that's why he was crying every
Mm,
day. My sidekick's not here anymore. And I won't lie, it was a little unbearable just because I just could not deal with how emotional he was. It was just unbelievable. But yeah, it's relatively the same. I would actually say the only hard part I had in terms of our relationship was more so when I was a teenager, like the high school age, so like 13 to
mhm.
17. That was the only time where we had a little bit of a riff. But in my adulthood, it's kind of the same as when I was younger.
That's cool. I always wondered when women have super, super close relationships with dad, and dad is like their superhero, right? In everything. If something goes wrong, you get a flat tire, you drive and get a flat tire. Oh, call my dad. He's gonna come fix it. You get in any kind of trouble, you say, "Oh, daddy, daddy, daddy." And then
Mm-hmm.
when you get in a relationship, you can't call daddy. You need to be calling, the significant other. You need to be reaching out to them and, leaning more on them. Like, how did that transition actually happen? Was it really difficult for you to make that transition? Or was it like, oh no, I'm done with daddy being the hero. I'm over here with, my significant other, and they can take the spot.
Yeah. I'll be honest. One thing about me, I'm still call my dad. So, but my partner is
Kayla.
I could call him my partner. I could call him for anything under the sun, absolutely anything. But I will say there are certain things that are just the really big things. I might actually call my dad first.
So, is that going to always be the way you handle it, or are you planning to transition that, or is it a way to like get married, or like what we doing with that, Kayla?
I definitely said to myself, when I get married, then it's definitely gonna be cut off. But as of right now, I call both of them. That's what I should have said. But I definitely call both of them. But I'm not ashamed to say I'm still call my dad.
You should never be ashamed of that. I wouldn't want you to be ashamed of that, but I was just wondering if there's ever a tug of war in reference to who's your first thought, who's your go-to when
My
you
partner will always be my first thought, but my dad is immediately after.
there's no smidget, there's no air in that transition. It's like we're sitting on top of the thumb and the finger together, like this tra- this transaction is happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
But that's cool. That's cool. That's actually is admirable that you even have that close of a relationship with your dad. So many, we were just talking about it, how so many people either don't have that relationship at all. It's like super non-existent, or it's strained, or it's minimal.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's amazing. It really is amazing.
Yeah.
I know a lot of women who desire to be daddy's girls and who struggle with the lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
in just everyday life in general. So definitely give your daddy flowers while he's still here, supporting you and making sure that you are all that you can be.
Wow, today's episode is a good one. I know you're enjoying it, and we'll get back to it shortly. Just wanted to take a quick break to let you know that Tammy would love for you to share any questions, comments, or topic ideas you have with her. All you have to do is send them to her in an email to podcast@IamTammyNicole.com. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get back into today's show.
How does, like, when you talk about communicating with your dad, is it like super, super easy? Like, what's communication like?
It's pretty easy. I think because our personalities are similar, it's pretty easy. There were phases in my life where it was difficult. Like I said, the only time we kind of had a riff in our relationship was when I was a teenager. So, like, again, high school age. The reason for that is because with a traditional dad, an old school dad, an old dad, a country Jamaican dad, they do not handle girls going through puberty very well.
Gotcha.
It's like a huge thing for them. So he had a hard time with my daughter is gonna start liking boys, blah blah blah. So we were bickering a little bit during that time, but before and afterwards, communication is relatively good. We can sit down, have deep conversations for a long time. We would butt heads sometimes, but we would always be able to circle back, apologize to each other. He would always be able to explain himself if maybe he got too mad or whatever it was. He would explain himself afterwards. Like, even in the hard times, we were still able to come back from that. So the communication's definitely there. And it's going pretty well, especially now at my current age.
Awesome. I was just going to ask, like, did you feel like he prepared you for like relationships and things of that nature because your relationship was so close and the communication was so good? Like, do you feel like you operate in your current relationship better because of the two of your relationship in general?
Yes and no. So the yes is because my dad would be the very type of dad to just say, men do this, don't talk to men that do this. If a man's not doing this for you, don't talk to him. A man needs to do this. Like, my dad's so
straight and narrow.
Yeah, straight and narrow, very masculine. So he'll tell me, like, a real man does XYZ. And so I always understood that. However, I would say no, just because at the same time, my dad was very overly protective. Like, strangers could even comment about how overly protective he was. It was very obvious, and him being strict as well, because I also grew up very, like, in strict Christianity. So I would say no, just because I was a little bit sheltered. So he told me the real deal, but at the same time, I didn't have experience applying it because I just kind of spent a lot of time at home.
You're restricted from actual exploring. Got it.
Yeah, he definitely had fears. He's like, I don't want my child to experience, SA. I don't want my daughter to be killed. Like, he was just paranoid of everything. So he would tell me how the world works, but then not really allow me into the world to see how it works. So
did that make it difficult for you to even try dating? Like, were you scared or nervous to try dating, or you just jumped right in once you kind of got free?
I was scared. I was also a late bloomer. My first kiss was at like 19. I didn't start dating till 21. So my first relationship was not good at all. And I think that just had to do with my shelteredness a little bit and just having a hard time actually applying, the things that I was told, because at that
Hmm.
point they just felt like words to me. And I was like, okay, so what do I do with this? But then I learned from there my ways. I was like, okay, my dad was right. And let me, you know, so I did date a little bit after that. And then I was like, okay, now I see what my dad's saying. This makes sense. And then I'm older at that point. So I think also it just made more sense naturally that I was over 25 when I started trying to date more seriously. So that one is also yes and no as well. He taught me things, but just didn't give me the chance to trial and error. Because with being so traditional, my dad doesn't believe in trial and error because he's like, in
Hmm.
trial and error, bad things can happen. So, but I had to explain to him that I understand your heart's in the right place, but you need to give me that chance so I can do things properly, the right way. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How has your relationship with him influenced the way that you love yourself?
Um, it influenced the way I love myself because whenever I was trying to accomplish something, whether it was school or whatever it was, getting into my career, my dad always said that I should make myself proud first. So I did deal with, insecurities and stuff like that growing up, but I would always hear that in the back of my head. So I would push myself to, I got to care about myself. If I want this, I have to love myself.
That is really cool. And it's rare. You don't really hear a lot of people, our parents in general, teaching us to love ourselves first and then kind of like handling life and the people around us. We're typically taught to people please and, be concerned about what other people are thinking
Mhm.
and, you know, what do they think about you? I can imagine dad saying, "You can't go outside in that outfit. You looking like you're,
Mhm.
available."
Yeah. My dad was
And
definitely
what?
very opposite of that mentality. Like my dad, I think another thing that made our relationship close is my dad wasn't afraid to tell me his life story. So my dad grew
Mm,
up kind of like a lone wolf, and I think that's why he's such a good dad because he was abandoned by his parents, and he didn't meet his
mm,
parents until he was adults. So since until he was an adult, sorry. So he is very much like, you don't care what people think. He was very harsh about it, but it makes perfect sense, and it needed to be harsh, or else I wouldn't get it. People are useless. People are gonna snake you. People are gonna stab you in the back. Do it for you. Have God on your side. Do it for you. If you choose to make me happy, I would love that, but do it for you. And he always told me that.
your dad sounds pretty amazing.
He is. Thank you.
He sounds pretty amazing, which is, super important because again, we wanted to take this, episode and really show and give flowers to the men who are doing things the right way, who are stepping up, who are really showing their children that they love them in spite of if they're physically in the house with them or not, who are really like providing a roadmap to fatherhood. And that's inclusive of girls and boys, but just being able to deposit true, authentic love and guidance. The man's role in a child's life is super, super important. It should never be overlooked. And so I think a lot of times because we have so many people who disregard and discount the man's position and role, it it affects everybody, right?
Mhm.
It really does ultimately affect everybody from childhood to adulthood when that position is not admired and respected as a whole. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So like when you think about that, like, and you're talking to the masses and you're talking to dads across the nation and says, "Hey, these are a few things that you should do in reference to cultivating positive and healthy relationships with your children," what would you really say to them?
Um, I would say, while you were saying that, I was thinking about something else too that made me see why my dad was such a good dad. So to give advice to others, I would say also be a good partner. So if you're co-parenting, treat the mother of your child well. If you're in a relationship or married, treat your wife well, because your kids will see it. And as I was thinking about it, I took into account how much seeing how my dad treated my mom also made me feel like he was a good dad, because whenever my mom was in the hospital, my dad would, like I told you before, my dad would wake up for 3 o'clock in the morning to go to work. My dad would spend the night at the hospital. My dad would cook because my mom doesn't like hospital food. My dad would cook my mom food so she wouldn't have to eat the hospital food. My mom has not washed her car in 30 years. My mom doesn't really do certain things anymore, and my dad's very domestic. That's another thing men don't do typically. My dad cooks just as much as my mom. My dad cleans, my dad irons, my dad does it all. So I think that's a really big factor in being a good dad as well. You need to just be a good man, period, because a lot of men think I can be a terrible partner but I can be a good dad, and that's not true. You kind of have
Mm.
both, because even if you're not in the same household, your child's going to see how you're treating their mother. And when they get older, they're going to become cognizant of that. And maybe that might taint their view of you. But also, I would also say cultivate the relationship based on your child. Because a lot of times a dad will just do what they want to do and just let their kid tag along or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But your kid wants to see you as their father at their functions, at whatever they're doing, their soccer game, their school play, like all those things. They want to see you interested in what they're interested in. I've seen a video online where there's street interviews where someone is interviewing dads and asking them questions about their kids, and they get all of them wrong. So know your child. You could ask my dad anything about anything I'm interested in from when I was a child to now. My dad can answer all of it. So you need to know them, and you need to have a good relationship with the mother.
That is very good advice. A lot of times, I think as parents in general, not just dads, but just parents in general, a lot of times we are so busy just trying to make sure kids have food on the table, a roof over their head. Some of them involved in activities and things of that nature that we don't really spend the time to actually get to know them, who they are. Like, they are human beings. They are individuals that are growing up to be adults, and they have different personalities and desires out of life. And we don't really take the time to really get to know them. We tend to put them into activities that we desire to be in, that we either didn't do well in or didn't get a chance to participate in, and said, oh, when I have a kid, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put them in this. I'm going to put them in that. And the child don't even like it because it's not something they're interested in, because we don't take the time to really get to know them. So that is a very, very, very good advice in general, not just for dads, like for any parent, to be honest. But, and I agree, how you treat the mother of your child is very impactful. When you were talking, I was sitting thinking, like, those were part of the issues that I had with my dad, even if I didn't verbalize them, was that, man, my mom does so much for you. She covers up for you when you don't do X, Y, and Z. She's, always overly protective and always telling us good things. She never told us bad things about him. The bad things, and if I was to say that they were bad, the things that I didn't like, or the things that I would say are not things I would tend to want to experience, came from him, came from my own experience with him, not just something I was told. And so when you were talking about how he would treat her, and it wasn't even that he would treat her bad, I just felt like she was ignored. I felt like what she desired or what she needed from him was ignored just because he had moved on with his life. And when you ignore a person who's really not out to do you any harm or bad, like, that was a very impactful for me, that I didn't even like say, oh, okay, this is why I feel this way towards you or about you. But you're right, it leaves an impression, because it's like the one that's taking care of me, or the one that gave me life, for you to be able to disregard them. I won't even say mistreat them, but sometimes it is mistreatment.
Yeah.
Could be very impactful to that child. So I agree. You know, you don't have to like them. You don't have to, be best friends, but respect is, do a dog. So respect them
For sure.
in general, that was really cool. Like, you actually have my own wheels kind of turning in general. But dads are normally not celebrated, so you just want to celebrate them on this upcoming Father's Day as it's coming. We won't just give you guys socks, we promise. We're going to give you some words of affirmation and saying, keep the job going, keep doing what you're doing. If you're not doing enough, do a little more. The kids are watching. They love you. You're very impactful and needed and necessary. Would you like to tell your dad something special?
Sure. So, to my dad, thank you for literally every single thing that you've ever done for me, for our family, period. We've been through a lot as a family, and you were always the face of our family. You were always the pushing force in our family, and you sacrificed a lot, not only for yourself, even just coming to a whole new country, but you sacrificed a lot for us, and you kind of put your life on the line for us. So I am indebted to you for that forever. So thank you, and I love you.
Awesome. And I'll shout out my own dad, RIP. He actually recently passed away in August. And as much strife and turmoil that we had, he did teach me a whole lot of things. I'm an entrepreneur because of him. I look at things differently in life because of him. I was always told I look just like him. I'm just like him. And as much as a kid, I would think that was a bad thing because I would always be just, oh my God, he gets on my nerves. It was the best thing ever. Like, the best part of me comes from him, and I celebrate it. I celebrate his life, and I love him, and I miss him greatly. And so on this episode, we just want to say Happy Father's Day, dads. It is very, 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 very important to celebrate our dads, regardless of the relationship that we have with them. They gave us life, and you are who you are because of them, one way or the other. Again, thank you so much, Kayla, for joining us on this episode. It was a pleasure to get to know you and to hear your stories. An encouragement for those, if anyone wanted to get in contact with you, what would they need to do for their self-care education?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Swan Power Inc. So SWAN Power POWERINC.
Awesome. Again, love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus. See you next week.
That's a wrap on another episode of Loving Me Before I Love You. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to show your support by subscribing and leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Stay connected with Tammy. Make sure you're following her on Instagram and TikTok at Coach Tammy Nicole. If you like to work with Tammy or have any questions you'd like her to answer, please head over to www.iamtammynicole.com. Until next time, always remember to love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus.